emotionally numb and spiritually hollow, was sent to Lekki for her own special assignment. The client was not a man, it was a dog. That night, something inside her shattered forever. Soon after, visions tormented her. She saw dogs in her sleep, heard crows in silence, and woke drenched in sweat. Then the sickness began, the same mysterious sickness, that the same cause that had consumed Amanda began to eat away at her body. Fear became her last companion. In a quiet village, wrapped in red earth and evening songs, three friends, Chisom, Chioma, and Amanda, completed their secondary school education with bright minds and restless hearts. They were daughters of hardship, raised by parents who could not afford to push them further academically. They made a path. They would live for the city, work, save, and one day finish school on their own terms. Chioma had an aunt in Lagos, known far and wide in the city and village as Madam Gold. Whenever Madam Gold returned home, she glistened with wealth, gold jewelry dancing under the sun, expensive perfumes filling the air, and her signature red car rolling through the dusty village paths. She flung money like one who had a personal mint at home. What they did not know, only the shadows in the city knew, was that Madam Gold was the architect of a hidden empire built on hookup networks and exploitation. Her trade was not cosmetics, boutiques, or high fashion as she claimed. Her true business was recruiting vulnerable young girls whose parents were dead, sick, or poor. She promised them shelter, education, and work in her so-called boutique, a fictional store where she claimed to sell clothes, bags, shoes, and jewelry. Parents, desperate and hopeful, surrendered their daughters to her. But in Lagos, the truth changed shape. The girls were compelled to swear blood oaths, binding their silence, binding their fate. After that, they were commodities in Madam Gold's world. For every money earned, 80% belongs to her, a fee for accommodation, clothing, security, and food. When Chioma told her friends who her aunt was, neither Chisom nor Chimamanda hesitated. They believed life could only get better from where they stood. They arrived in Lagos, eager, nervous, and full of hope. Madam Gold welcomed them with painted smiles, expensive clothes, and promises wrapped in honeyed words. That sweetness soon soured. She sent Chioma to one of her wealthy clients, not for pleasure, but as a housemaid. Chioma worked long hours, scrubbed floors, polished ties, washed clothes, and swallowed insults like medicine. But she believed that suffering was part of the journey, and that maybe her friends were going through the same. They are working in other homes, just like her. Meanwhile, Chisom and Amanda were not sent to homes. They were ushered into the hookup circuit, groomed, styled, perfumed, and displayed like merchandise to men in hotels and bars. They refused and cried, but survivor quieted tears. They told themselves this was temporary. One day they would leave. One afternoon, Chioma was sent to the mall to buy provisions. She pushed a supermarket cart with her faded slippers, her hair unkempt, wearing a warm dress that smelled of sweat. Just as she turned into the cosmetic aisle, she froze. Standing under crystal lighting was a woman so radiant, skin glowing, wearing a body-hugging gown with diamonds glistening at her wrist. It took longer than a moment to recognize her. It was Amanda. "You are shining, oh," Chioma said. "Your madam is treating you well." Amanda gave a sad smile. "Chioma, I don't have a madam in the house. I am under Madam Gold." The truth hit harder than any insult Chioma had ever endured. She stood speechless, embarrassed, and unsure. Later, Chioma confronted Madam Gold with shaky hands and burning betrayal. "Why did you let me suffer while they are living in luxury? Why did you lie to me?" Madam Gold laughed. A cold metallic laugh. "Suffer? You think they are enjoying? They belong to the business. If you want the easy life, join them. If you want to hustle, your broom and mop are waiting." Chioma chose the path she once judged from afar. She stepped behind the curtain and into the world her friends had already been swallowed by. A world where nights replaced mornings, smoke became bread, and morality was as disposable as lipstick wipes. Clubbing became a routine. Nights burned into neon lights, and heavy bass. Madam Gold took her earnings, dressed her in borrowed beauty, and sent her back into the night again and again. Then came the Mba months, the season where people returned to their village, wrapped in illusion. The air smelled of dust, diesel, and deception. Christmas was near, the time when everyone needed to prove they have made it. Roads flooded with car owners, hired cars, fake designer bags, imitation gold jewelries, rented wigs, and debts dressed as success. Failure was forbidden. Chisom, Chioma, and Chimamanda were no exception. They needed money. Fast money that would make them unrecognizable in the village, and so the deals grew darker. One night, Chisom left with a man she met in the club, a man whose words dripped from his watch and whose smile never reached his eyes. She was never seen again after that day. No one fired a report or searched for her. Silence was the price of their choices. Shortly after, Amanda was flown to Abuja to entertain one of the most powerful men in the capital. But when Amanda returned, she was a ghost. A strange sickness gripped her. No doctor could name. Her skin grew gray. Her eyes sank. And then, horror beyond imagination, maggots began to emerge from her private parts. 2 months later, she died, unrecognized by the same world that once envied her beauty. Chioma, now emotionally numb and spiritually hollow, was sent to Lekki for her own special assignment. The client was not a man, it was a dog. That night, something inside her shattered forever. Soon after, visions tormented her. She saw dogs in her sleep, heard crows in silence, and woke drenched in sweat. Then the sickness began, the same mysterious sickness, that the same cause that had consumed Amanda began to eat away at her body. Fear became her last companion. In her desperation, she fled to a church. Broken, terrified, and unable to carry her shame, she confided in a reverend father, pouring out every detail: the oaths, the sex, the sickness, the dogs, the death. He did not judge her. He fasted and prayed for her. Days turned into weeks, and miraculously, her body began to heal. The church, moved by her testimony, decided to sponsor her education. Through St. Vincent de Paul, they gave her a new beginning, a chance to rise again. The Reverend Father took her evidence, names, locations, recordings, lists, and reported Madam Gold to the police. With a coordinated raid, the brothel houses were invaded, girls were rescued, Madam Gold was arrested. Chioma entered the university with a fire that would never go out. She studied law, not for prestige, but to fight for the girls like Chisom and Amanda, for the ones who vanished, for the ones who died in silence, for the ones who are still trapped in hookup networks, trafficking webs, and hidden brothels disguised as boutiques. After the raid, some of the girls returned home to the village. They stood before elders, told of blood oaths, of exploitations disguised as opportunities, of secrets sealed in hotel rooms and hidden apartments, girls used for rituals, filmed without consent, forced into drugs, and discarded when sick. The air shifted. Mothers wept, fathers raged, but real power does not fall easily. Madam Gold was released, not because she was innocent, but because she knew people whose signatures could silence justice. Politicians and business moguls who had dined with her, slept with her girls, and relied on her silence did not let her remain behind bars. And soon, she resumed business as if nothing had ever happened. But wickedness, no matter how powerful, eventually meets its reckoning. Years later, another girl died under strange and horrific circumstances, similar to Amanda's case. Chioma was no longer a victim. She was a lawyer, and she took the case herself. In court, she stood not merely as a counsel, but as testimony, living evidence of the evil she once endured. Chioma presented documents, Confession, recording brought survivors to the stand, mothers who had been deceived, medical reports, blood oath artifacts, bank transfers, and diaries recovered from the house of horror. Madam Gold had lawyers, influence, and money. But Chioma had truth, and this time the nation was watching. When Chioma delivered her closing argument, the court fell into a solemn silence. They were listening to the voice of every girl who had been used, abandoned, and silenced. The judge, moved and convinced beyond doubt, gave the final judgment. Madam Gold was sentenced to life imprisonment. When Chioma returned to the village after the trial, she stood before parents and elders with wisdom and said, "Do not give your daughters away because someone promised a better life in the city. Not everything called opportunity is opportunity. Not every woman who returned home dressed in luxury is blessed. Some are bleeding on the inside. Not all that glitters is gold. Some gold is poison." She warned them of the reality behind the glittering lies. She spoke of education, empowerment, and vigilance. She challenged parents to protect their daughters, not with fear, but with knowledge. With Madam Gold imprisoned, Chioma did not allow victory to become her resting place. Justice had been served, but she knew too many girls were still at risk, too many parents still unaware, and too many villages still blind to the silent trafficking that grew beneath the promise of a better life. So she built something new, something living, healing, and unstoppable. She founded an NGO called Voice Restored Foundation. It was birthed from pain, conviction, and an unrelenting desire to protect others from the path she once walked. The foundation was dedicated for 4 missions: rescuing girls trapped in trafficking and hookup rings, providing free legal support and rehabilitation, educating rural communities on the truths behind the deceptive city promises, empowering girls academically and economically to prevent exploitation. Within months, her NGO became a national symbol of hope. Her name appeared in conferences, interviews, and legal panels. Volunteers came from across the country. NGOs and churches partnered with her. Yet, she always introduced herself with the same words: "My name is Chioma. I was once a victim. Now I am a voice." Her village had seen Christmas countless times, but that year, Christmas carried a different kind of excitement. Chioma returned with purpose. She walked straight to the church compound, the place where she once cried for deliverance. It was there she unpacked a miracle. Truckloads of food supplies, rice, gari, beans, noodles, vegetable oil, spices, salt, toiletries, new clothing, sanitary pads, blankets, and more. She organized the space herself. No preferential treatment. Every villager received the same gifts and was welcomed with the same warm smile. After the food drive, Chioma moved through the village with her team, visiting elderly widows, disabled men, orphans, and households suffering silently. She prayed with them, gave them cash and gifts. She sponsored the hospital bills of 2 sick children. She paid the school fees of 15 girls. She donated new textbooks, sandals, and writing materials to the community school. She funded sewing machines for widows and startup grants for struggling women. Her foundation donated a borehole for clean water, solar lights for the primary school, mattresses for the local orphanage, mosquito nets for the pregnant women, Bible study books for the church youth group. And when someone asked her why she was doing all this, she answered simply, "Because I survived by mercy. Now I must become mercy to others." That Christmas, Chioma did not just give food. She gave knowledge, dignity, and hope. She planted seeds that would grow long after she was gone. Elders prayed blessings over her. She came as a daughter and left as a guardian. Gold that comes without purity destroys, but a life purified by truth becomes a lantern for generations. Thanks for watching.